This lecture on the home front focuses on the contributions of Canadians at home in Canada during the war. Total War. World War I would affect not only soldiers fighting on the battlefields, but also those in Canada on the home front. It was truly a total war. Total war refers to the involvement of everyone and everything in the war effort. Every Canadian was asked to contribute in whatever way they could. The war effort. This graphic of interlocking gears reveals the cooperation needed between the government, Canadians on the home front, and soldiers fighting in Europe. Success was dependent on the contributions of everyone. How did Canadians contribute to the war effort? They converted their lawns to victory gardens. All extra produce was shipped overseas. They limited the amount of meat, butter, sugar, and bread in their diet. They conducted fundraisers for the war effort. Women worked in factories producing munitions. Care packages were produced for soldiers, and Canadian crops were used to help feed soldiers overseas. High demand for Canadian food. There was a great demand for Canadian crops. Russian wheat exports to Europe had stopped as a result of fighting on the Eastern Front. The beautiful farmland of northern France and Belgium was now a complex system of trenches littered with dead bodies and crater holes. Production of war materials. In 1914, Canada had one munitions factory. By the end of the war, there were over 600 factories producing munitions. Over 250,000 Canadians would work in these factories, many of which were women. However, there was suspicion of profiteering. This means increasing the price of a product during a difficult time. Joseph Lavelle was named head of the new Imperial Munitions Board to regulate production and stop profiteering. Paying for the war. Wars are very expensive. The cost for the war in 1918 was $439 million per annum, which means per year. There were different ways that the government attempted to raise money for the war effort. New taxes, personal income tax and business income. The government implemented these new taxes with the promise that they would be removed after the war. We still have these taxes today. Victory bonds. Canadian citizens lent money to the government and were paid back with interest after the war. The War Measures Act. The War Measures Act is a temporary law that gives the government more power to protect and defend the nation in times of war. The government took different actions. They imposed censorship. This meant that the government limited what people could say and what newspapers reported. Enemy aliens were also monitored closely. Enemy aliens were Canadians from a German background. For example, in Kitchener, Ontario, lived many German Canadians. The government viewed these people suspiciously. In order to show their support for Canada, these German Canadians renamed Berlin, Ontario, Kitchener after Lord Kitchener of Britain. In addition, the police were given more power to arrest and detain people. Enemy aliens. As mentioned in the previous slide, enemy aliens are immigrants from an enemy country living within Canada. The treatment of enemy aliens. 8,500 were placed in labor camps. They were poorly fed and poorly clothed and forced to work hard. Businesses were boycotted. Homes and businesses were also vandalized. Conclusions. Life at home in Canada drastically changed during the war. Whether you were a mother, wife, daughter, or son, your day-to-day life was altered. The war effort was much more than just the soldiers fighting in Europe. The contributions of Canadians at home was integral to victory.